Good morning. Happy Friday, everybody. All right, I'm trying out a couple of things here in the test kitchen. I usually use a software that is tied into my practice, and it is called That Clean Life. So that's how I make all of my recipe books, and it's usually good, but sometimes they're a little complicated. I have to search a whole lot for the macros I like, and someone suggested to me that I try using ChatGPT to do this. And I've been trying some of the recipes for a couple of weeks. They're okay. The good thing is that you can tell it what you have, and it'll make you the recipes based on what you have in your pantry. So great. But I'm not certain about the last couple recipes I've tried. It might also be the protein powder I'm using, because you've all heard me talk about this before. So, and you know, I adapt my recipes. a lot. So this is an apple pie protein muffin. And I can post the recipe, but not sure if it's worth the post, I'll be honest. But it is perfect macros, 35, 35, 30. I am using my Equip protein powder. Again, I think that might be the problem because these are really soft, and I think there might have been too much liquid. It's 2 tablespoons of almond flour, 1 tablespoon of coconut flour. I used a replacement, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit because I'm not a fan of coconut flour. So we have some replacements. I use a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, which again gives, great fiber, but there's that taste to the flaxseed. And PB2. I believe this was put in here because there's 1 tablespoon of it. I honestly think that was used as a flour replacement. They don't taste really peanut buttery at all. And then baking powder, cinnamon, I shredded up an apple. So of course that's adding more liquid to the recipe. So I think my big problem is they're just too wet. Yeah, I had too much liquid in here for sure. And then my favorite sweetener, allulose, and almond milk. Okay, so maybe need to retry these, and then a tablespoon of butter. Maybe need to retry these with a different protein powder, one that works, like a pea protein, not a beef protein. So the recipe says you can do them in the microwave also. I like them in the oven. I'm not a fan of baking things, especially in the microwave. And the recipe is supposed to make 4 kind of normal size muffins, a smaller normal size, but clearly I used my mini muffin pan. And yeah, not a fan. So if I was going to make another batch on here, but the problem I run into is if I'm doing something that needs baked, it's taking too long. I like to keep these things short and sweet. So this recipe absolutely needs some revamping. We'll keep playing with it. The good thing about it would be perfect for fall. You could use pumpkin instead of apple. So I usually like to find a good base for a muffin and then replace the applesauce with pumpkin or the grated apple with pumpkin. That's always a fun thing to do in the fall. Throw some walnuts in there. But I'm telling you, I really do think it's my protein powder. I've been trying out the Equip and the Prime beef broth protein powders. They're great to put in your coffee. They're great to add, because they turn into liquid. So we've had this conversation before. That experiment is over. Not real good in baking. So I will try this again. But the recipe as is good on paper, right? Cinnamon, spices, the protein and the fiber with the flax, absolutely perfect to stabilize your blood sugar. I love to find recipes for snacking with strategy, kind of, if that makes sense. Because you all know I love my snacks, I love my treats, I love a good muffin with coffee. And I've told you before, that's the perfect sneaky way. A scoop of the collagen or beef broth or the prime beef collagen protein in my coffee, 20 grams of protein. The other muffins, usually I have a good staple muffin recipe that's 12 to 15 grams of protein. So with my afternoon coffee, I have almost 40 grams of protein for that snack. Amazing. So here, this is tricky. I wanted to talk about flours when you're baking because someone once asked me, like, how many flours do you really need to keep in your pantry? And I agree because, it gets to be a lot. You've got, the flaxseed meal. I've got the oat flour. You've got the almond flour. Then so many recipes call for coconut flour. And now recipes are using PB Fit as a flour high protein replacement because really, if you get the organic, and a roasted PB powder is less chance of mold, because if you know about mold, if you've heard any influencers or anything like that, Hi Highness, that peanuts are one of the most highly mold containing nuts. But when they're roasted, so if you get a roasted nut, careful that they are not, most nuts are roasted in seed oils. So, you kind of want to watch that. Usually I buy raw nuts and roast them myself. But a supplement like this, the roasted PB powder, in the roasting process, they're raising that temperature, and dry roasted peanuts are awesome because they're not using any seed oils. So, a fantastic, the only thing in here, organic roasted peanuts, organic coconut sugar, and salt. So yeah, you have a little bit of the coconut sugar, but in my scenario of good, better, best, this is damn good. Yeah, yeah. Check your PB Fit. I know the organic has the coconut powder, but 7 grams of protein. Yeah, absolutely a good option to use in place of some flour in recipes if you're looking to increase the protein. Not as high as a good protein powder that you can use in your baking, but still. So the thing about coconut flour and why it's used in so many recipes is it is really absorbent, okay? So in this case, of my sad little wet muffins, it was just too much of everything. And coconut flour probably would have been a good choice because of how much liquid it absorbs. Of course, Ines, I'm glad you're the same as me. So you either want to, if you're taking out the coconut flour, you can replace it with almond flour, you can replace it with oat flour, or ground flax. So ground flax, it's a little better than psyllium. Sometimes I've used ground psyllium husk in recipes, and that to me has a tendency to feel slimy. I'm a texture person, and if the texture isn't right to me, forget it. And that's how I feel about the coconut flour also. So coconut flour has a spongy texture to me. It makes things spongy. And you do get a little bit of a coconut vibe. So if you're adding coconut flour, adding coconut oil, that leans the entire recipe to, so it would blend well with coconut if you're going for that vibe. So kind of lean into it, or just use ghee or grass-fed butter in place of the coconut oil. If you're replacing the coconut flour with any of these, you absolutely want to use less than a liquid than it's called for, because again, I hope you can see this. Can you see this? It's really, really moist. They might be good frozen, so I will try these frozen, but I baked them. I mean, they're teeny guys, right? Teeny tiny mini muffin. I baked them for 12 minutes. I baked them for as long as you were supposed to bake the full-size muffins. So just way too much liquid in here, not enough of the absorbing flour. So that's it. Now, I honestly could probably do an entire lesson on different flours and how to use them. So let's look at our good old ground flaxseed. Now, you wouldn't necessarily use this as a flour replacement, but you could take out, say, 2 tablespoons of your flour and add this. It will absorb more liquid than a regular flour, than an oat flour, than an almond flour for sure, but not as much as a coconut flour. Oat flour and spelt flour are probably going to give you a very similar texture to regular flour. However, in a macro, when you're looking at the macros, you're not getting a whole big benefit from using oat flour. I am a scientist. It's awful. Anyway, the oat flour might have a little more protein than regular flour. Well, it will. And no gluten, of course. And if you're using organic oat flour, we're non-GMO. So less glyphosates. I can't say no glyphosates, because once they're in the air, they're in the air. And you cannot police airspace, and farms and crops have close proximity. Even the organic farms have a close proximity to non-organic farms. And when they're putting things on their crops, you can't really guarantee that you are getting 0 glyphosates and 0 anything, because you can't control what's in the air. So texture-wise, we're leaning towards oat flour. If you have a good protein powder like that Neora pea protein powder, the Jocko I like because it is a variety of different proteins, not just whey. If you go with an all whey protein, that is the most difficult for your gut to process, and so many people, it causes so many problems in a lot of people. Just stomach aches, they just can't digest it easily. So I lean towards a pea protein or a variety, the casein kind of with a little pea, a little bit of whey, but not all whey protein. If you go with one of those, or even that Flav City that I talk about a lot, you can use half regular flour and half that protein powder, and you're pretty much getting the same texture. And I have also used half the protein powder and used half of almond flour that a recipe calls for, and the texture is good. Half almond flour, half oat flour, you get good texture. So if you want to add more fiber and you aren't a fan of the taste and feel of the flaxseed, you can add nuts, add hemp hearts. Those are all, add chia seeds. That would be a fantastic way to absorb more liquid, because you know those little chia seeds, those little things absorb 10 times their weight in liquid, which, again, I always give the warning of not eating those as a spoonful. And I've heard people do that, or don't put them directly in a thick yogurt, because if you're using a Greek yogurt, like the Fiade that I really like, that's super thick. There's not enough liquid for those seeds to absorb. So when you're eating them, even if you're chewing them really well, as they are going down your throat, they are collecting and absorbing all the liquid that it can. And then, you know, it starts to get dry and people are choking. So let's not do that. Always, always add your chia seeds to liquid and let them sit for 5 to 10 minutes. And it gets like, makes like a gelatin. Use that, mash them up with blueberries, throw your chia seeds in, and you have blueberry jelly. I mean, yeah, that's how my head works, people. And sometimes it's a scary place to be. But we will talk more. This was a fail. I have more fails, right, in my kitchen, but that's okay. That's how you learn. If you have any questions about replacements for flour, I have tried many of them. So ask me. I'll be happy to tell you. Have an awesome weekend. If there is sunshine out there, find it. And if you like golf, go Bryson.